Okay, folks, I think we're going to get started.
There's no change to the plan.
Please have a seat.
What are those differences?
I'm doing good. Good.
The ones in the purple are double?
Thanks for coming out tonight. My name is Frank Stevens. I'm with the City Planning Department. This is a stakeholders meeting. It's an informal meeting. There won't be any decisions made tonight. It's not a public hearing. Those will be next month and in December. We do have a sign-in sheet in the back, so please sign in so we can keep you on our mailing list and notify you of any future meetings or changes in the scheduling or anything like that. The Amber Ridge development is a proposal on the west side of Route 301 southbound. It includes 200 attached townhouses and up to 20,000 square feet of retail commercial space. There's an existing entrance in and out, cut right here. Right now the property is vacant. It's about 20 acres and is zoned for mixed use. So I'm going to turn things over to Matt Tedesco and his team, and they'll go through the PowerPoint show and go through some more details of the project and answer your questions.
Thank you, Frank. Good evening, Joe. Meinard's here, the planning director for the city. My name is Matthew Tedesco. I'm a local land use and zoning attorney with offices in Greenbelt. I'm very familiar with the Amber Ridge project. I've been working on it for at least 12 or 15 years, I think. The inception of Amber Ridge predates me by probably 20 years, and we'll go through a little bit of that. It's a pleasure to be with you all this evening. I want to introduce, we have a number of people here to answer any questions that you all may have, but really we're here as a stakeholders meeting to get your input, get your feedback, advise you of the project, give you the history, and kind of take you through it. We have a PowerPoint presentation. We also have a board up here that will encourage folks to come up and take a look at it, answer any questions that you may have, and certainly want to hear some discussion points and or items that you all have regarding the project. With me this evening, on behalf of the contract purchaser, which is CBR Amber Ridge LLC, is Mr. Ed Gold. Jessica McMahon is with MBR. She's here with us this evening. Alex Villegas with Rogers Consulting, Phil Hughes with Rogers Consulting, Mike Lenhart with Lenhart Traffic and Consulting, and of course myself. I have Mike up here because I'm sure some of the items that we want to talk about tonight is traffic. We understand the traffic issues on 301, so Mike is here to go through that with all of you in detail. We did put together an agenda just so we had kind of a framework to go through. I'll go through the PowerPoint with you. We did the introductions, a brief history of the project. Amber Ridge, prior to it being rezoned, was zoned commercial shopping center. It was fully entitled for 100,000+ square foot shopping center. I'm sorry, 200,000 square foot shopping center. Thank you, Mike. For a 200,000 square foot shopping center that was ready to go, permits were in hand to build a shopping center on the property. The commercial market changed primarily when the Giant left and moved north. At that point, the project kind of just stalled. The 2006 master plan for the Bowie vicinity area recommends mixed use for this property in order to accommodate the Point of Ridge Mixed Use Activity Center. So that was adopted in 2006. In around 2013, 2014, the property owner decided to adhere to the master plan recommendations and went through the rezoning process. Some of you were very much involved in that process, Mr. Ideo, and others I know who live on Pittsfield were involved in that process. The property was rezoned in 2014 to MXT in contemplation of the master plan recommendation for mixed use in order to have a future planned residential commercial development. In 2017, pursuant to the MXT zoning, we followed what's called a conceptual site plan. That was approved, as I mentioned, in 2017, and that's really the first step in the MXT entitlement process. That was done 2 years ago, and since then the property has been marketed. Mr. Gold has put the property under contract, primarily the residential portion. The current owner, which some of you know through the Rappaport companies, is currently still going to be owning the 2 commercial pads, although that may change. But currently, right now, Rappaport will be taking that property, the commercial piece, through the entitlement process. During the CSP process, we did appear before for a stakeholders meeting. We also had a meeting before the Bowie Advisory Planning Board, as well as the City Council. City Council and planning staff recommended approval. It was ultimately approved. And what you see before you this evening is a culmination of that entitlement. And the plan that you have in front of you is exactly the same as what the conceptual site plan envisioned: 200 townhouse units and about approximately 20,000 square feet of commercial retail. Currently pending, there are 2 applications. One is called preliminary plan of subdivision. That's been filed. It's not yet technically accepted with Maryland National Capital Park and Planning, but we expect that that application will be accepted hopefully within the next week or 2. The detailed site plan would follow after that. The detailed site plan was filed actually today for pre-review. It probably won't be accepted for review maybe for another 3 to 4 weeks, I would guess. And the acceptance date is what sets all the public hearing dates. So we don't have public hearings outside of the city's public hearings currently. Mike is here to talk about transportation and adequacy. We did do, as part of the rezoning in 2014, we were required to do a traffic impact analysis with that approval. However, with the preliminary plan of subdivision, we are required to do another updated traffic impact study, and Mike is here to discuss that with you all. So I think everyone here is generally familiar with the location of Amber Ridge, but for everyone's identification that may not know, it's on the west side of 301. It's approximately 1,200 feet south of the intersection with Mitchellville and about 500 feet north of the intersection of Point Ridge Drive. As I mentioned, the site plan that's proposed is consistent with the conceptual site plan that was reviewed 2 years ago. 200 townhouse units, 20,000 square feet of commercial retail. We've got a pedestrian trail connection to the South Bowie Community Center. We've got an entry feature with a pocket park as well as a multi-age playground that's proposed. Some of the amenities, as I mentioned, the playground, and again, this will be further articulated with the detailed site plan. But we've got the detail up there with the playground as well as the entry feature with the open space passive park. And Jess is here from NVR. We have some elevations of the proposed townhouses. And the size of the townhouses range from 16-foot wide, 20-foot wide, and 24-foot wide. Traffic, as I know from representing the applicant in this project for many, many years, I know traffic is the biggest concern with the development. So first and foremost, when we went through the conceptual site plan as well as rezoning, Mr. Ideo will bring it up if I don't, so I'll bring it up before he can. One of the biggest issues is having multiple access points from the property out on the southbound 301, but more importantly, to have a median break to northbound 301. When the shopping center was approved and platted, SHA had an approval for a median break and a traffic light to access northbound 301 from the property. With the rezoning and with the current proposed development, the density is far less than a 200,000 square foot shopping center. In other words, the trip association with the current development from what was approved is far less, and Mike can go through the differentials between that. But as a result of that, and what we talked about at the time of conceptual site plan and rezoning was the previously approved SHA light and medium break is no longer technically warranted. However, we are in the midst of doing a traffic impact study to show that median break and show that light. We agree and we are committed with the city and the city council's view and Mr. Ideo's wish is to have that median break and that light. We are in support of it, we are in favor of it, and if SHA permits it, we will build it. And so we think that's an asset to the project. However, the permitting of it is really outside of our control, but we are showing it in our study and we are committed to doing it if it's permitted. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike Lenhart. The slide, and I'll point to it as he's talking about it, but the yellow dots that you can see, hopefully everybody can see, those are the intersections that were studied as part of the study that was most recently done for the preliminary plan. Take it away.
All right, so we looked at the intersection of 301 and Mitchellville Road. We conducted new traffic counts in the morning and evening peak hour from 6:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. and 4 to 7 p.m. At 301 in Mitchellville, 301 at Pointer Ridge Drive at Pointer Ridge Place, which is right by the post office, and then at the existing right-in, right-out that goes to the old line bank, and then there's our site access, which there's no traffic in and out of there today. But we had completed a traffic impact study that initially did not include the median connection. The city had contacted us and asked us to update that study. We have a process of wrapping up that update to include the median break. It will have a scenario with and without the median break. We're going to do a signal warrant study at the median break, and ultimately it will be State Highway's decision on whether they're going to approve the median break and or the signal. There are signal warrants that come from the Manual for Uniform Traffic Control Devices, and there are 9 warrants. They're based on traffic volumes mostly, and we have to meet certain thresholds of traffic volumes in order to satisfy warrants. And if the warrants aren't satisfied, the state will not approve a signal. But we are providing the data, providing the study. We are working with the city to, we know it's important to the city and to the citizens, and the crossover and the signal has been budgeted. If the state approves it and requires it, we will build it. But ultimately, this is state's decision.
So that's our presentation on the project. Frank, I don't know if you had any additional comments, but we're happy to field any questions that the community may have.
The only thing I would say is, before we get into any questions, is the city public hearing dates. The Bowie Advisory Planning Board date for this case is Tuesday, November 12th at 7 o'clock in this room, and the city council hearing date is Monday, December 2nd at 8 o'clock in this room.
Comments, questions? Yes, sir.
Do any of the traffic studies have any estimates of what the future traffic will be? Because there's going to be a lot of building along this road. And if so, what would they take into account? And if not, is there room in the future to build a crossover when it's warranted? Technically.
So the short, I'm going to give you a short answer, and I'm going to let Mike give the long answer. The short answer is yes. The traffic impact analysis through the transportation guidelines requires us to do an analysis based upon existing conditions, and then background conditions, and then overall conditions, which includes existing background and the traffic associated with the project. And so the background is anything that's approved. So obviously you may be referring to South Lake and some of the other projects that are approved, subdivided, and now under construction. All those are included as far as background.
They're included in terms of growth. We're required to apply 6 years worth of growth, and we look at historical growth rates in the area, and we apply growth, which accounts for developments in the area and beyond. And so they are accounted for in terms of the growth and the background growth. And we will be making improvements at each of these intersections because Route 301 intersections fail the adequate public facilities test, and we are required to mitigate our impact. So whether you include one car in background or 10,000 cars in background, we're mitigating our impact, which means we're making, once we add our traffic and you take our improvements into consideration, the conditions will be no worse and will be better than what would occur without us, because we have to mitigate 150% of our impact.
And Mike, can you take us through the improvements that will be made regardless of the crossover? So with or without the crossover, there are certain improvements that this project has to make to mitigate, and I just think it's worthwhile to mention those again.
Right now, we are proposing at Mitchellville, if you are coming eastbound on Mitchellville, to build a free right turn movement with an acceleration lane to go southbound on 301, so you don't have to sit and wait behind queued vehicles there. The 301 at Pointer Ridge, we have two options. One option is for a double left turn coming out of Pointer Ridge to go north. The other option is a southbound double left turn, call it a U-turn, if you will. So if we do not get the median break at the main access, then people will have to come out and go south and make a U-turn to go north. And so under that option, it would be a double left turn for that movement. And then if we are successful in getting the median break at this location, that takes a lot of traffic out of this intersection, and it changes our requirements slightly at this intersection. It lessens them somewhat.
What would be the chances of getting a traffic signal at that median break? I think pretty slim because you have one at Mitchellville Road and Pointer Ridge.
I think probably slim would be my guess. The state, our experience with the state is that they don't like to approve or install a signal unless it meets those warrants for signalization and the volumes are already there. We've a number of projects I've worked on. We've projected the traffic volumes that will come once the development is fully built. And in many cases, the state has said, we will not approve it, we won't let you put it in until the development is up and running and we can count cars and see if it actually meets the warrants or not. Because if they allow a signal to go in and it's on projected volumes and it doesn't meet the warrants, then if an accident occurs, there's liability that the state allowed the signal to go up.
Thanks.
Sure.
Yes, ma'am.
I have two questions. First, your expectations if you don't get the signal in the median break is if people come out on 301, you're expecting them to make a U-turn at Pointer Ridge. Okay, so basically what your expectation is for them to move across 2 lanes of traffic in a short time frame to get over to that point.
Yes.
Okay, which is essentially what was originally occurring around Walmart, of which they had a traffic fatality because of that. And there have been umpteen accidents at that point, and they have made efforts to resolve the issues sort of.
Sure.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is you're going to be waiting for traffic fatalities before any fix is going to happen at that intersection, because that's pretty much a guarantee, because in rush hour that traffic is totally backed up. There's no way that you're going to get across.
Traffic is heavy, yeah, it is. And I mean, the signal up at Mitchellville Road does stop traffic and provide some gaps, but it's still heavy through here. One option is if we don't get the median crossover with the city's support, perhaps we could put a signal up just for the right turn out of the site. And so if you envision coming right out of the site, going south, and then making a U-turn to come back to the north, if we were to just signalize the right turn out to stop traffic, and then you could coordinate the traffic between Mitchellville Road, the new signal, and Pointer Ridge so that it stops traffic and lets people come out and get across. That would still require state highway approval. We can't do it unless they say it's allowed.
Okay, my second question is, how do you propose to deal with the Pointer Ridge Place traffic going on to Pointer Ridge Drive? Okay, because there again, people aren't guaranteed to use that. There is a lot of traffic for the post office, especially during peak times, rush hour is backed up to or past that intersection. So trying to get out to Pointer Ridge Drive to get to 301, which would be an alternate option, is again taking a lot of chances.
Yeah, and I would say one thing to keep in mind, and Mike's got the numbers so we can go through the data with respect to the amount of cars anticipated to do that movement, but I will say, given the fact that this is a far less dense project than what was currently proposed and approved, that there is reduction to the impact of that, given the fact that it is now 200 townhouses, not 200,000 square feet of commercial. Otherwise, you'd have commercial traffic coming in and out of there. But Mike has the numbers with respect to the trips associated at that intersection. And there are some improvements on Pointer Ridge Drive that would be proposed as far as traffic coming from the northbound side.
Well, but the point is that without any extra traffic, that intersection is an issue. So
We have to
we're
improve, so legally we're required to mitigate our impact, so we can't make it any worse. And
That's partially true. On 301
Pointer Ridge Drive.
at Pointer Ridge and 301 at Mitchellville, where they're failing, we can't worsen the condition that's already failing. And so we have to mitigate our impact at those. The intersection of Pointer Ridge Place at Pointer Ridge Drive, we do envision there would be some traffic using that. Our study contemplated that. If you are, if you live in the neighborhood here and you want to go west on Pointer Ridge Drive to get out through the community and out the back way, you would come down and go out that way. We anticipate a small percentage of the overall traffic in the development, but yet it would still be some. There might be some people that want to come out and go to 301 and south. However, we think most people would come out the main access
To go south.
to go south or to get back to the north. But we did assign traffic to the Pointer Ridge Place connection. We studied it. While I hear and I understand everybody talks about issues at that location, and some days there's probably more so than others, we did study it. It does pass the county's test. And so, that we did look at it. And the study will be reviewed by the state, the county, the city. And if there's questions, we'll work through those with the agencies to make sure that everyone's satisfied with the study.
How does your traffic study compensate for tax time and holiday traffic at the post office?
Well, we are not supposed to count during holidays. So our counts are Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays.
I'm not talking about holidays. I'm talking from November 1st until January 1st. There's extra traffic going into the post office. At tax time in March, there's extra traffic going into that post office. How is that traffic being taken care of in your traffic study?
I couldn't.
You're not.
Yeah, I couldn't say because I don't have those counts. We've conducted counts on normal days.
So then your traffic study is incomplete.
Well, it's conducted according to the guidelines.
Your traffic study is incomplete. You're not.
The traffic study is consistent with what we're required to study.
You can take the traffic in June, when school's out.
No, we can't.
There's no traffic.
No, we can't.
But
Russ, I'm sorry, we can't do that. It's unfair for you to say that for the folks that may not know the difference. We cannot do counts or studies in the summer when school is out. The guidelines, which we don't control, that are adopted by the county and reviewed by the state, reviewed by the county, set certain particulars and parameters of what needs to be studied. The study complies with all of those. Those parameters and those guidelines may not be what you want studied, but it doesn't change the fact, it doesn't make the study incomplete. If the study is 100% consistent with what's required, it may not be to your satisfaction, and I understand that, but that doesn't invalidate the study. I know you disagree with it. We're trying to get your median break.
Yeah.
We're trying to get your median break.
Yeah.
Work with me.
I mean,
We're trying to do what we can to make sure people can have the front access.
I've been at study at the park and planning over there, at the planning board, the planning board's meetings where traffic studies have been presented, and they've shown traffic coming in from what's the name? At Mitchellville Road, and oh God, it's on names. What's the name of that street on the other side? I forget the name.
There's Pete Street and Queen Anne Bridge.
Queen Anne.
Queen Anne Bridge Road, yeah.
They've had traffic come into 301 North, increasing the number of cars on 301 North going towards 197. There's no crossovers, and yet when it got to 197, they had less cars at 197 than what they had going up from that intersection at Mitchellville Road. And when I brought that up, I says, explain to me what happened to those cars. Nobody wanted to explain to me. I have nothing against.
No, I'm not familiar with the project you're talking about.
But I have no confidence in any traffic study that's being performed. None.
Well, the only confidence that I could offer is I don't just turn this in and somebody rubber stamps it. This gets reviewed by 5 different agencies within the State Highway, Park and Planning, Transportation Planning Division, the city staff.
I understand.
And so, there's a lot of scrutiny that goes into this, and oftentimes we've got...
But still, you got a post office there which contributes to traffic. It's light most of the time, but there are periods when there is so much traffic there that it will jam up Pointer Ridge Drive and Pointer Ridge Place. People coming out of your development will not be able to get down Pointer Ridge Drive, at Pointer Ridge Place.
But they'll have
because
other
the
access.
traffic
They can
is
go out
there.
on 3 if Pointer
And it's
Ridge
going
is
to
back.
back it up into Pointer Ridge Drive.
We understand. Yes, sir.
I just have a quick question. To kind of give the background, I live on Paddock, which is just one street off of the Yellow Road right there in the subdivision. I never really see people over by the post office. I think it's fine, maybe I'm missing something. In your traffic study, you mentioned that you use, when school's in session, is that because there are generally more cars on the road in the morning and the evening?
Yeah, the guidelines require us
Versus
to...
over the summer?
Yeah, they require us to count during school, when school's in session, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, not a major holiday, and generally the day before or after a major holiday.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
The study, does that include weekends at all?
No, weekdays, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday when school's in session is what we're required to count.
No weekends, no days when there's a game going on at the base house?
That's correct.
And what are the total access, so you might have covered this maybe for your comments, but the access points to the ridge, is it just the one on the 301? Where the potential was 301?
There's 3 access points.
There's a total of 3.
There's one here that's an existing right-in, right-out curb cut to the open field. There's one here that's an existing right-in, right-out, and the old line bank, and it comes back in and ties into Pointer Ridge Place and comes down. And then there's, it would have access to the end of Pointer Ridge Place, which is a dedicated easement through the office condominium, and then a public drive down to Pointer Ridge Drive.
So all the access are basically directing traffic towards 301 South, basically. And then you would have to maybe use turn at some point if you wanted to go.
Unless we get approval for the median break,
The
then
median break is going to include a traffic light.
if approved by the state, we're,
So I know you came in after, so that was part of the earlier part of the presentation, so let me just, if everyone will indulge me. So one of the issues when this project was rezoned 5 years ago and then conceptually approved 2 years ago was a strong desire to have a median break and a traffic light for access to Route 301 directly from the site. When it was originally approved and platted, it was for a 200,000 square foot shopping center, which generates far more traffic than what's currently proposed now. At that time, a median break and a traffic light was approved by SHA. Subsequently, with the lower density, this is a far less dense project than a 200,000 square foot shopping center, it no longer met warrants. However, we are showing that median break and doing a warrant analysis for the light. We're prepared to put it in, we're prepared to construct it. The only issue is SHA has to approve it, which we don't really control. We've included it in the study, we've budgeted for it. We think it's an asset, but they won't just allow us to put in a light or put in a median break unless it meets certain warrants and it's supported by the study, which they'll review. We're including it in our study. A question was asked, what's the likelihood doesn't meet warrants? It doesn't really meet the warrant, but we're trying. And hopefully with the city's support, we can get it. And we're willing to do it, but they need a permit.
And at Point Ridge Drive and 301, are you still trying to increase that to 4 lanes on Point Ridge Drive? I was here for a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I know, I remember.
Pointer Ridge Drive it depends on what's approved with the state. If the state approves the median break and a signal here, then we would be widening in the median here to create a second left turn lane to go north. This is what we're proposing. If the median crossover here is not widened, then we would either be widening through here to get a second turn lane all the way back to go north, or a second U-turn lane to come back to the north from southbound 301. So we have options. We still need to work through it with the state to determine what they're going to approve.
Yes, ma'am.
If you get the signal there, that alleviates probably quite a bit of traffic, and you would expect that a high percentage of your traffic would go in and out the main entrance. However, if that signal's not there, realistically, the only train going out, yeah, okay, maybe they'll go both ways, I'm not so sure. But realistically, the only traffic that's going to go into that section is coming from north. Okay, if you're coming from any other direction, there is no way you're going to go down 301. You're going to be coming in and out Pointer Ridge Place. So if you go to Central Avenue, if you go to other parts of Bowie, you are going to be going in and out Pointer Ridge Place because that's the most practical way of getting there.
I would agree. Yeah.
Okay, going on 301 would not be most people's options. So have you accounted for that? I mean, when I asked you the question the first time, your comment to me was, well, a small amount of traffic might go down this road. But I don't think that's a realistic assessment. I think it's going to be quite a bit higher.
We did. So what we do is part of the scope, before we put our study together, we do a scoping agreement with Park and Planning that includes trip generation, how much traffic are we going to generate, and where's the traffic going to be going to and from. We actually assign percentages where they're to and from. Park and Planning looks at it and they either say, okay, we agree with this, or we don't agree with it, we think more is going to go this way or that way. Based upon that, we then assign traffic. And with what you just said is correct, that if you're coming from the south on 301 and there's no median break here, you're going to make a left at Pointer Ridge, you're going to go in Pointer Ridge Place to the site. That's how we've assigned traffic under that scenario, because we have several different scenarios in our study. One with a median break and one without a median break. So we have looked at it. It's in there, and the improvements that we've recommended are based on those different scenarios.
But pretty much if you're gonna go most places in Bowie, you're gonna go in and out of Point Ridge Place rather than go on 301.
Maybe, and it depends. If you're going to the north up here, you're probably going to go out on 301.
I avoid 301 at all costs.
Yeah. Most, people in Bowie go down the non-major roads because it's quicker, it's shorter. So I would say, yeah, most people are going to find out quickly that they're going to go down by the community center, Pittsfield.
Mitchellville,
and they're gonna-
Pittsfield, that's where all the traffic goes.
Right, and they're going to go to Mitchell.
Everybody tries to bypass 301 by going down Mitchellville to Pittsfield. Pittsfield to Point Ridge Drive.
The traffic is doing that now.
Well, that's accounted for in our traffic counts. Yeah.
You did traffic on Mitchellville Road also,
The 301 at Mitchellville, we did.
but you didn't do it on Mitchellville Road.
No.
Well, you're missing all that traffic. There's traffic there today.
Again, we submit scoping agreements to Park and Planning.
Yeah,
They
and again,
identify the critical intersections that we study. So
There's no effective traffic
Right, so
on the city
what we
streets.
have to do is make sure we don't make the situation any worse. And that's part of the mitigation, that's part of the road improvements that we would have to make to mitigate our impact, taking into account those existing intersections.
You're increasing traffic
But
on city streets.
for us, we're making improvements so that it mitigates the impact that we would have on those existing intersections. So
Just the
they're not being made any worse by this development. Yes, ma'am.
Are you planning to make any improvements to Point Ridge Place?
there's not room enough. It's a 50-foot right of way.
Yeah, two-way.
It's fairly narrow through there. I went to the post office on Saturday, and as I turned onto Point Ridge Place to go into the post office, the parking lot very quickly filled up. And it was all I could do to pull over to the curb with 5 people behind me to park to go to the post office. It was a free-for-all.
Yeah.
That was Saturday. That was without all this extra traffic. Another question I had, previous meetings that I attended, I understood there to be 180 to 200 condominiums planned for this property, and it seemed to have a lot more green space than what is there now.
I think with the rezoning that was shown as multifamily, a multifamily type product, but with the conceptual site plan, it was shown as towns.
The last meeting I attended said condominiums, which would be a lot less buildings and more.
Yeah, so like I said, I think with the rezoning, actually the rezoning would show higher density with the multifamily than the 200 townhouses in the
Yeah.
conceptual.
No,
Yeah, I don't remember the unit count with the rezoning.
it said 100.
I think it was over 300 units with the rezoning, and then the conceptual site plan showed 200 townhouses, and preliminary plan is here 200 townhouses.
My other question is, where are all these families going to send their kids to school? Because Point Ridge is already at capacity. And
It actually, I think Joe in the city is looking at that. It's actually not at capacity, but nevertheless, Prince George's County requires at the time of permit for all these residential uses to pay a fee. It's about $16,000 or $17,000 a unit. So times that by 200, that's the amount of money that will go into the general fund for that impact.
What's the plan for those 2 open spaces there on 301?
It's commercial pads, we don't know yet.
Huh?
We don't know yet. There'll be a separate detailed site plan for those when they come in for whatever they're going to be. We don't know yet. Commercial and retail, but we don't
So
know.
that's not, before it was part of your development. Now it's not.
Well, so it's still part of the development. It's phase 2 of the development. This is phase 1. Yes, sir.
Were there any other configurations assessed for the actual parcel of property itself, or did you have to stick with the 200 townhomes because of some, financial constraints and like that? The only reason I ask is it possible to take a look at maybe going with a lower density as long as it's economically feasible, obviously, but maybe a lower density could alleviate some of the proposed traffic problem.
So again, I hope I'm not coming across as argumentative. We are alleviating the traffic. Again, legally, we're required to mitigate our traffic impact. So I'm not sitting before you and telling anybody that there's not a traffic issue on 301. I drive 301 trust me, we know there's a traffic issue. Legally, no development along that corridor is allowed to come in and further.
No, I understand that, Council.
So,
I understand that.
yes.
So my question is, have you looked at it? Or
It's
the
all
team?
been, it's all been looked at, yes, and I would say, I mean, that median crossover, I mean, that's a seven-figure number to get that median in that light. So, and that doesn't even include all the other infrastructure improvements that we were talking about with respect to Mitchellville and Point Ridge Place. So there is a point in time where financially, there's a certain level of density that
I understand.
that you have to meet. Yes, ma'am.
What's the price range of the townhouses?
So I'm going to let Jess with MBR come up and answer that question, if that's okay.
So I think Matt had mentioned we have 3 types of townhomes here. So NVR along with Cruiser Homes are going to be building the townhomes here. So we have a range in widths of 16, 20, and 24-foot townhomes. Essentially, they're going to range anywhere from 1,600 square feet up to 2,700 square feet. And so with that comes a pretty broad price range. Likely we'll be starting in that like upper 300s range, and probably finished product for the 24-foot towns will end in the low 500s. And the square footage will vary by product type.
Gee, I could get $1 million for my house.
I'd like $1 million for mine. I don't think I'm that lucky yet though.
I'm only 300,000. I mean,
Your market studies show that this area can support a $500,000 500 square foot home.
Yeah, so especially with a 24-foot townhome with a front entry garage, they do tend to get large. When they're around 2,700 square feet, frankly, they live almost like a single-family home.
Okay.
And that's probably what supports that price point. You can get into that upper range. A lot of times you have people that maybe don't want the yard maintenance or can't afford a single-family home in that size in this area that would probably end up selling in the upper 5s to low 6s. So it still affords a family, maybe with children, who wanted more space, more bedrooms, et cetera, to have an option of home ownership in this area.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So I don't see any more hands. Yes, ma'am.
What are your plans, given that you're putting in a lot of impervious pavement and parking spaces, what are your stormwater management plans? Do you have any additional green space that you're planting, trees, things like that, to mitigate the fact that you are adding a lot of pavement to this area?
Yeah, so I hate to keep comparing it back to what was approved with the shopping center, but this is far more green than what the shopping center would have been. The shopping center would have been a sea of asphalt with 200,000 square feet. Phil Hughes with Rogers is here. He can get into all the details with the stormwater. There's an existing stormwater pond that exists today right here that will remain. There's also a number, and Phil can get into the details, of microbiome retention areas, which is consistent with the current ESD, environmental site design requirements. There is significant landscape buffer planted more than what's required in the landscape manual along the perimeter of the property, as well as internal green space with internal green plantings and open areas. And Phil can go through where all the bios are.
I don't know if I can say it much better than Matt did.
Yeah, I'm sure you can.
What happens to the existing reservoir that's there?
Excuse me?
What happens to the existing water reservoir that's there?
It's no, the stormwater management facility in the front remains.
Yes, currently,
But that's not where it is. There's something further
you're
back.
talking about the one that's in the rear over
In the
here?
back,
Yeah.
it gets
Yeah,
removed.
that gets removed. That's currently there, and I know DPI has done some coordination with Rappaport and had that facility, I guess, revised, and currently it discharges to the front facility instead of going out around the back of the lot. So there was a lot of complaint about that over here previous.
So in 2018, it was piped from
2018.
in the 2018 era, you could see it
Yeah.
actually having been installed. I think it was done in 2016 or 17. Don't quote me on that, but it was sometime around that period of time. The facility that's here would discharge basically out here, and there's an easement to accommodate that, but having a lot of issues and complaints from some of the residents here, the current owner, who again is under contract to sell, piped that facility and now currently discharges into that facility. And so under the new, why don't you explain what will happen with the development?
The new development, the mature, you have a couple small bioretention facilities right now proposed. Currently, we do have a stormwater management concept plan for the site that has been approved by Montgomery County Department of Inspection for DEPI. Pardon? Prince George's, yeah. I just walk around everywhere. Travel. So we have coordinated with DEPI, and they have approved the stormwater management concept plan for the site. We did that with the CSP, as that was part of the requirement when we came in for that. And that does show microbiome retentions being provided here, some bioswales along the back, and then there are a couple more biofiltration devices up here around the entrance. And then the pond is being utilized because currently all the drainage goes to the pond right now, and the pond is proposed to stay, and it will discharge here into the pond.
So it's not going to drain, because my house is right here.
Which one? Is
It's
it?
not going to drain.
It's right here.
Yeah.
You and I spoke in the
Yeah.
other day. So if I'm not mistaken, correct me, but I think you're one of these?
Yes,
This one?
yes. And
Yeah.
so my yard and house is already lower, so it's not going to drain back.
No, and actually, your house and lot, Phil, correct me if I'm wrong, but as I understand the topo, and I'm not an engineer, I just pretend to be one sometimes, your ground and all the ground actually back here, topography-wise, sits higher than what this property will be sitting. So you're actually going to be up.
No, it's lower.
Well,
It won't when
Not
when
when
it's
we're done.
when it's
When you're
done
done.
and graded and it's leveled out. You're going to be higher. So if anything, water's going to be draining towards us, not
Yeah.
towards you.
well, yes, that's correct.
Yes, ma'am.
As part of the new zoning rewrite from Prince George's County, they are encouraging the planting of native plants and also in the median areas to make some of the medians larger than it's currently used in shopping centers. So do you have any plans to implement any of these?
So there's a list within the landscape manual of native species that we have to adhere to. So those would be, on the detailed site plan, there's a schedule of plantings and all those are consistent with that. As far as the median width, I don't think we're proposing any plantings in the median itself, but certainly on the perimeter where we've got some ghosted in there would be some street trees and things like that.
And would you consider planting some of them as native plants?
Yeah, so the landscape manual calls for that.
Okay.
Yeah. So yes, but I can't take credit for saying yes because they kind of make us. So with that, I want to thank everybody. Just so you all know, again, we'll be back here for a work session or for a hearing before the Advisory Planning Board on the 12th, a City Council on the 2nd. I don't have planning dates, hearing dates with the Planning Board. Frank, will probably keep everyone advised that we probably will have an idea of those by the time we get to the City Council, which we can share. One last question. I thought I was wrapping up. Two last questions.
I still would suggest consideration of some sort of modification of the intersection of Pointer Ridge Place and Pointer Ridge Drive. I cannot say what the modification should be, but the lady here did bring up a good point, is that oftentimes on weekends, it's basically there's one lane of traffic that can be on Pointer Ridge Drive. And the other thing is there is nothing, the intersection between the two streets has no way of turning, nothing to control traffic. And if there's extra traffic, I think that should be considered. The other thing is, there's 2 gas stations on the corner, and their business will be affected depending on how you make changes.
Yeah, so one of the things, and we will take that into consideration, we'll go back and look at that and see if there's any availability. Again, we're limited on what's available with respect to right-of-way. We don't have the ability off-site to acquire more right-of-way. We can dedicate right-of-way along our frontage, but we can't go get other people's property in right-of-way. So we are confined to what's there. We'll look at it from a design standpoint and see if there's any options. As far as the gas station, there is sufficient right-of-way. If the median and the like doesn't happen, and that other lane that Mike was talking about is required, there is sufficient right-of-way currently, right now, to accommodate for that along Point Ridge Drive. But it, duly noted, duly noted. And one final question?
I was just curious, like, what are you doing as far, because that whole area is basically a mound of the marble clay. So
Yeah, so
I'm curious as to, like, how are you developing this so that once these homes are built, they don't start sagging like Old Line Bank did? Because the Old Line Bank that's there is actually, if you stop and look at it, it's not plumb. It's sunk after it was built.
Yeah, so
that whole area there.
Yeah, so we're aware, and actually Ed and his team and this team have really gone above and beyond understanding the marble clay. It's not the entire property. It's limited to a certain area of the property. However, we did about 250 geotech borings. Basically, every single lot that's proposed had a boring on it, and we have soils report and geological reports, and all of that. And we don't foresee, or the studies don't support that there'll be any issues with that at all. Like I said, I don't know how many borings were required, but like I said, we did a boring on every single proposed lot, 250 plus borings, even the parcels. And so the geotechs and the studies have indicated that there won't actually be any issues. And it'll be graded, it'll be addressed.
Building on top of marble clay isn't necessarily a bad thing, as long as the ground that sits between the marble clay and where we're building homes is appropriately handled. And based on all the geotech reports, that's what allows our developer, in this case, to be able to mass grade and provide building paths for us to build townhomes, so that doesn't happen. Make no mistake, we never want to build a home that has any potential of sinking down the line.
Right, but I'm sure that all these studies and all these things happened when they developed.
The county has a rigorous
area over there that the bank sank.
Yeah, the county has a rigorous process because of the growing concerns over marble clay in place that were likely not in place when that bank was originally built. I can't speak to whether they were exactly the same, but I can tell you there's definitely a heightened concern, and the process both the developer and a home builder has to go through prior to actually constructing a home to ensure that there aren't issues associated with specifically marble clay are pretty rigorous.
One last comment.
I'm going to hold you to that.
No, this is me, my last. In your commercial area, okay, which is comparatively small compared to where it used to be.
Sure.
But I assume that most of what you're expecting there will be small business or small company.
Do you remember what you studied?
I think we assumed a bank and a...
So for the traffic impact study, we had to make some assumptions of what that would be. And with this preliminary plan, we're going to get a trip cap. And so whatever assumptions we made on the use would have to conform with that trip cap. If a use comes in there that doesn't, we will, or not Ed, but the owner of whoever retains the commercial piece will have to go back through the preliminary plan process to retest to raise that trip cap. But under the trip cap, what did we assume?
Just assume 20,000 square feet of retail.
Of retail.
Because we don't know what type of retail.
Yeah, yeah, so as far as what it is, it's probably going to be service-oriented commercial retail. It would be the guess. It's not going to be a big box. The big box stores just aren't developing anymore right now because of e-commerce.
And since you don't have specific design plans at this point in time, will any consideration be given to doing any more creative design of that area such that there might be either a little open space or a little plaza space or some kind of gathering space to make it look less like a strip mall.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver because I don't know what it will be. But just so you know, with this preliminary plan and with this detailed site plan, the detailed site plan is limited to the residential. That property, although part of the preliminary plan, has to come back through another detailed site plan process for which we have to show details of the landscaping associated with the commercial, details of the parking, details of the buildings, as well as architectural and uses. So at that point, that would be more appropriate for, hopefully when I'm standing up here or somebody like me is standing up here presenting the commercial piece, for that to be, and if it's me, I'll remember tonight and say, I know you raised that a couple years ago, so. I'll keep that in mind.
How will they get in and out?
Through the 3 access points.
Where?
Through the 3 access points.
The 3 access points?
Yes.
2, 3. And how is that one on the other side of incoming traffic going to get out of that traffic?
Most of the retail traffic will probably be oriented to and from 301. I mean, a lot of retail traffic is passed by, so it pulls trips out of the existing traffic.
You're going to have cut-ins and cut-outs.
Oh, you're asking how they get to the pad?
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, there's going to be a cut here to allow people to get to those future pads.
There will be entrances that allow you to get into those sites. They're just not shown now because you don't know the orientation.
We don't know how the buildings are going to lay out. So with that detailed site plan, we've got to show the curb cuts, the driveways. I mean, that's not part of this deal.
They're not going to have access to 301.
No. There won't. No, the only access to 301 is what exists. This right in, right out, and this right in, right out. There won't be additional access points between these two or north of this one. Yeah, so all traffic will, for the commercial will come in that point. Yeah. Thank you.
One last thing I'd like to say is, Matt reminded you of the dates of the city hearings, and for those folks who came in a little late, we have a sign-in sheet. Please sign your name and address and email address so we can keep track of you all for future mailings. I think that's it. Thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Now,